Hello and welcome to the Success Showcase. I'm your host, Eric Lopkin with the Modern Observer Group. And with me, as always, is Chip Janiszewski from the Happiness and Success GPS. Chip, how you doing this week?
Doing great. How about you, Eric?
Doing all right. I'm a little groggy. My body's getting used to the new times. Yeah, new times.
Oh, yeah, that was crazy. Dark out at 5 o'clock yesterday, but it was light out today at 6 in the morning. So,
Right.
a nice trade-off. And being a morning person like I am, that helps. But we've had a nice stretch of November weather. It's beautiful outside, sunny and so on. And oftentimes November is kind of cloudy, so can't complain.
No, not at all. But it's definitely heading into winter. The temperature's been dropping. We finally had to turn on the heat.
Yep. Had our first frost within the last week, which is the latest, I think, in the year that we've had in a long time. But yep.
Yeah, it did come very late this year.
Yep. So, but not looking forward to probably my favorite holiday of the year coming up 2 weeks from Thursday, and that's Thanksgiving.
Yeah, all of this, the frost, turning on the heat, it's all an indication that the holiday seasons are upon us. They're starting to come. And, everybody has their favorite traditions that they do over the holidays. And that's actually part of what we're going to be talking about today, which is creating processes. Well, traditions are actually processes. We all have these holiday traditions that we follow, making the same recipes, having the same people over, doing the same things year after year. And the reason we do it is to create that holiday feel. We get a certain feeling out of these traditions that makes everybody happy, that makes us relaxed. Well, the whole reason they work is because you're following a process year after year to create them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, this has been going on forever. I mean, take Thanksgiving here, but, if you're looking at Christmas and New Year's and other things that have been going on for centuries and centuries and centuries, and they've just all been, an occasion to gather together as a group of people, as family and friends. Sometimes there's a lot of places that'll have, citywide, townwide celebrations and so on. So it's there's a lot of things that are going on, but yes, you have to design a process to make the whole thing work. And that's what we're in the process in right now, because Thanksgiving, as I said, that's my favorite holiday. And we have been having that over here at our house for the last 10 or so years, which is fantastic. But it takes a whole lot of planning as far as who's coming, because we got my family of 6 brothers and sisters and nieces and nephews, and now grandnieces and nephews, and my mom's still around and that kind of thing. And obviously we had the logistics of getting the turkey together, having enough room to eat in the house, and all this other kind of stuff. And so we do have a lot of this written down ahead of time, and it comes with identifying who's coming over, and then what we have to get for food, how we're going to plan it, what time we're going to eat, all that kind of stuff. But the more fine-tuned you have this, the easier it is to do every year, even though it's still a lot of work. But that's what processes are all about.
That's it. Processes are really about not reinventing the wheel. It's when you figure out what works, write it down, create that process, and follow that process to get it to work time and time again. And that's what we do with holiday traditions. I mean, let's have our listeners flash back to the first Thanksgiving they ever made at their own house. Some people actually practice preparing the turkey. Some people wing it, but then you say, well, how long does it have to cook? How long does it have to defrost? You have to figure all of these things out to get the whole dinner to be ready at the same time. And who's going to come? Who's not going to come? Where is everybody going to sit? How do you keep the fighting cousins apart? There's always little things with all of the holiday traditions. And the first time people do it, it's trial and error. But as you do that trial and error, you keep track of what worked, What did people like? What dishes did people like? Maybe over the course of 3 or 4 years, you started with one set of dishes and you've evolved into a different each year, adding or subtracting what people liked and didn't like. That's creating the process. And the holidays are all about it, but we do it so unconsciously during the holidays. It's important to pay attention to how you put these processes together and use that for the rest of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. And taking Thanksgiving for instance, because I mean that's traditionally the time everybody gets together for a meal. The other holidays sometimes are for gifts or get-togethers or whatever. But for Thanksgiving, we usually average 15, 20 people at our house, which is a lot of people. And that is a tradition that actually started when we moved to Connecticut from Wisconsin. I was 9 years old, and all of my cousins and families were left back in Wisconsin. And so my mother's parents, Grandma and Boppy, they used to come out every single Thanksgiving for Thanksgiving. They came out from Milwaukee. So that's why this is my favorite holiday of the year, because it was the only time that I saw family. But my mom would have to prepare the turkey and all the other stuff going on. And now that obviously we've taken it over, and well before that, Thanksgiving is a major production. So number one, you have to identify the people that are going to come. And with us, we have room for nobody else but family and maybe a close friend or two. But then number two, the big thing is, where are they coming from? Because we have people that are in the local area, but we have people coming from Rhode Island that are going here and back the same day in other parts. So what time are we planning on having the turkey, which usually for us is like mid-afternoon? And as you were saying, how long is it going to take to cook that? And turkey, it depends on how big the turkey is and that kind of thing. And then if you're having a big party like we do every year, what we do is we write down the whole menu based upon what everybody likes. And then we delegate out who's bringing what. So my wife isn't doing everything. We have my niece who's unbelievable at baking pies, bringing those things over. We have other people bringing salads, appetizers, vegetables, and all that kind of stuff. So everybody shows up with something to contribute to that. And then, of course, the last part of the process is leaving me alone with the dishes. But that's a lot of fun anyway.
But yeah, you've got it all planned out. And something you said really rings out is that you write it down. And that's really the big mistake that people make, is not writing a process down. Because our memories are not as good as we think they are. So it's very important to write down step by step what you're doing. So in your case, it's, who's coming, where they're coming from, who's bringing what. But when you're talking about a business process or a process, to simplify your life, it starts with the list, and it's getting everything done. And people don't have to be so precise for the first go round. Think of it as a brain dump. Just dump everything that needs to be done onto a piece of paper. You can put it in the right order later, but the important part is to focus on identifying everything that needs to be done and getting it out on paper.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, whether you're doing this for the holidays or for your own business, it's really a recipe to keep your personal sanity and to do things a whole lot better. Because as you said, we can't remember everything. And the more you write things down, the better off you're going to be organizing them. And, as I've talked about all the time, and there's softwares out there that does this. I mean, once you write down all the what's, you can organize them as far as priority wise, timing wise, how to do them, and so on and so forth, in a number of different ways. But that's what it starts with. So with business, the what's are defining your goals and then mapping that process, who's going to be doing it, testing it, and that kind of thing, implementing and monitoring the results and adjusting as you have to do that. I mean, that's how you do this in business. And hopefully the holidays, you don't have to adjust a whole lot, because you probably lose people along the way, which maybe is a good thing. But it's that's the way that the whole thing works. But it all starts with, what are you doing? What are your goals? And so on and so forth. How do we have a really great Thanksgiving dinner? how do we build this business to serve the people that we want to serve, as far as identifying the clients that we're looking for, how we're going to get them, how we're going to produce our product, how are we going to follow up. All those things have to be identified and organized, and the process is how you do it.
Right. And, a very simple process that most of us are already familiar with is a recipe. For the holidays, you're putting together the traditional holiday dinner, whatever that tradition is in your family. But it always starts with that recipe. And the point of a recipe is to get the same results over and over again. And I actually just had this with my son. My oldest son moved out, and he always enjoyed my chili. Well, I always cooked the chili. I never measured. I did everything by eye, by hand, and I never wrote anything down. So when he moved out, he could not make my chili because he had no idea what went into it, what the amounts were. So for him, the last time I had made chili, I finally took the measuring cups out and actually put and measuring spoons and figured out what the actual measurements were. So now it's written down so he can make my chili. And it doesn't matter that I'm not making it. He can get the same result that I did because now he's got that process to follow.
Yep. And obviously, with these days with the internet, it's so easy to just go online and find a recipe for turkey. And it can be baked turkey, it can be a deep fried turkey, all this other kind of things. But you can get a recipe for whatever you want there just by going and taking a look at stuff and downloading it and making it happen. So it's never been easier to do that. Obviously, grandma's recipe is best. I mean, my grandmother used to say, I think it needs a little more rum, regardless of what. But that was, that was her back in the 60s. But yeah, I mean, it's all out there. And the same thing for business processes. You don't have to say, okay, how am I going to do this? All the how-tos are out there on the internet as far as developing processes and how to monitor them and so on and so forth from start to finish. So use the resources.
Right. And if you are putting together your own process, think of it as the recipe. The recipe lists the ingredients. Well, that's all of the physical things that you need to do the process. And then putting the process together is like putting together the recipe. First you do this, then you do this, then you do this. And having a process has amazing results, even if it's simple. And this was found out a number of years ago by the Mayo Clinic, because the Mayo Clinic instituted a policy that every patient got a checklist. And every doctor, every nurse had to follow that checklist. And when something was done, it was checked off. Now, first of all, the checklist stayed with the patient. So as a doctor changed, as a nurse changed, if it was a new shift, all they had to do was look at the checklist and know exactly what was done so that nothing was being duplicated. Well, what they found was that the quality of care that the patients received skyrocketed and the costs dropped because you eliminated duplication of effort, because everybody knew exactly what had already been done and what still had to be done. So that's another reason for instituting policies like this and processes, because you are improving the service you give to your clients and you're lowering your own costs.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've reviewed a couple of times the book, The E-Myth Revisited, and talking about writing up a franchise model for your business. And checklists are the main operations thing that you need to have. And basically, checklists are written down for the how-tos. So just as you said, you check off things as they're done. Doesn't matter who's doing it because it's just sitting there. Could be at the Mayo Clinic, could be for stocking shelves at a Walmart, any of that stuff, making a hamburger at McDonald's. But the checklists are there to train people, and they're for accountability to make sure things are done. And so that whatever you're doing there is very, very easily duplicatable. And all you have to do is go through it. You can obviously modify things if you got to change, make a couple of changes. But that's what it's all about. And obviously, the byproduct is efficiency and more profitability just by doing it, and a lot less headaches on the person who's doing it ahead of time saying, how am I going to do this?
Absolutely. And as you just mentioned, building a franchise model, the process was actually what got Ray Kroc's attention when he was selling malted milk shake machines to the McDonald brothers, and what made him want to buy McDonald's, because they had created a process that every burger was created exactly the same way. It was a process. They had limited what they were offering. So they weren't going off in all different directions. They were focused on the product. And that process allowed them to churn out burgers, fries, and shakes faster than anybody else at the time. And it was all because they had put together the process. And it was literally a checklist of, you do this, 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 this. And it would move down the assembly line the same way Henry Ford built cars.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and for businesses too, this is how you gain a competitive edge in your industry, is by coming up with a really, really good streamlined process that may be a little bit different from other people. But in, most times with businesses, it's just assessing what you're doing and then analyzing what has to be done and putting together the process to do that. But there's a lot of different ways that you can do that. You need a process for number one, business development. How do you engage prospects in the first place? And then how are you going to take care of them once you sit down with them? I mean, you have to have a step-by-step thing, just like as we were talking about the Mayo Clinic and making hamburgers and so on and so forth. A process is a process.
Right. And there's a lot of benefits to having a process. We've talked about, increased productivity. We've talked about decreasing costs. But going back to the holiday tradition, customers come back to your business because of the feeling that they get and the quality that they get when dealing with you. Well, you want that same experience. You want that customer to have that experience, no matter who waits on them, no matter who handles their account, no matter who is working with them. And to do that, it's important to have that process. This way, no matter who's working on it, they're doing the same thing time and time again and creating that same experience for the customer. Customers love that feeling of comfort. They know, okay, no matter what happens, I'm going to be taken care of. Well, the process is about how that happens, and making sure it happens the same way over and over again gives that feeling of comfort. I know dozens of businesses that right now are having problems with supply chains, and most of their customers are exhibiting customer loyalty. They said, okay, well, if it takes a little longer or if it costs a little more, that's fine. We're going to stick with you. The reason is that they've been with the company, they've gotten that same service over and over again. They know they're being taken care of. And it's that process that allows the company to do that.
Yeah, we talk about when you're dealing with people, you like to deal with people that you know, you like, and you trust. Knowing and liking is great when it gets going, but trusting is the fact that you know that the process works every time you're dealing with that person. And that's exactly what you're talking about there. Why don't I digress a little bit from this too? Because we talked about processes for the holidays and processes for business, but how about processes for the person in the mirror who is you? We're on autopilot a lot of times too. We're every single day doing this and doing that and so on and so forth. And if you want to do a little bit of self-analysis and you want to make life maybe a little bit more positive for yourself, put together and write it down and just start doing it every day. A short morning routine that starts your day on a positive note to get things going. Do the same thing when you're going to bed every day. And there's a lot of other things you can do, for your physical health. Work a walk into your routine every day, whatever. But if you start writing these things down and following this, I'm not talking about complicated things, but just a few small pointers here, make a very, very big difference. So do not forget about that person in the mirror to start this whole thing. Because if you have good processes going, the one you create for your holidays and for your businesses are going to be better too.
Absolutely. And, a while back, and of course, almost everything's now a while back because we've been doing this for 5 years. Uh, we discussed a book, The Morning Miracle, and it was all about creating a personal process for you first thing in the morning to go through to get your day started on the right foot. And there were, a lot of different ideas that you could use. I recall, it was drink a glass of water so you could hydrate yourself after being dehydrated all night. Take 5 minutes to meditate. But whatever your morning process is, it could be, get up, go into the shower, wash your, shave, wash your hair. Whatever it is that gets you going in the morning, that's the same system that we're talking about. It's creating a process to get you from waking up to ready to face the day.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been doing this for 5 years, so we're reading each other's minds here because it was that book that got me to think about this today. But it's also what got me doing my current morning routine a couple of years ago when we got into this. And the things that I had been doing before is exposing myself to positive readings and this and that, whatever. But a couple of things that I picked up right away. He said the first thing you do in the morning is have a glass of water. Then just do 5 to 10 minutes of exercises to get the old heart pumping. And then do some positive affirmation work or whatever, or reading, or however you want to do that, meditation. And he said, if you can just work in 20 or 30 minutes in the morning to get your day started right, it could include a little walk or whatever, that's what you're doing. But I've been doing the water. I've been doing the exercise every single morning. I've been doing reading and other positive development work for a long, long time. But that routine is down pat. And it does not include turning on the internet or the news or anything like that, because the bottom line is you want to start things positively. So
Yeah, and that's something that's important to note is that the processes are meant to work things for the best. So you just said you don't turn on the news or the internet in the morning. And that's because that's what helps you create that positive mindset. When you're first creating a process, there is going to be some trial and error. But you have to look at not just what you're including in the process, but what you're leaving out and why you're leaving it out. Is there something you're doing that's actually detrimental? Get rid of it. Don't, get that out of the process. For example, if, we'll go back to Thanksgiving dinner. If you're making a sweet potato casserole and you make it with little mini marshmallows, only you find out nobody who's coming likes mini marshmallows. Well, next time you remove the mini marshmallows. You find the things that aren't working and get rid of them and replace them with processes that do work. And it really is, we've been talking about holidays and all of this, but the key to actually putting together processes goes all the way back to the scientific method. It's form a theory, experiment, check the results, and go back, did that meet your theory or not? If not, go back, experiment again, and see what works. And you try this over and over again, changing one thing at a time until you've got the process down that it's delivering the results that you want.
yeah, absolutely. And I mean, one of the things that I teach, obviously, is positive mindset development, and it's a combination of the tools for developing it, and then the maintenance method, which is just practicing gratitude, and then the things that we're doing wrong. And I love talking about them. These are the throwouts: criticizing, complaining, judging, all that other kind of stuff that we all do out of our own insecurities and self-consciousness. And the bottom line is, what other people think about you is none of your business. And most of us are worried about our own personal image. But if you're walking down the street or you're in a room full of people, do you think they're thinking about you? No, they're in their own miserable worlds as far as worrying about their own self stuff. So it's putting things in perspective and then just really working on being the best you can be. Because if you're that is pretty darn good.
Exactly. And, it's not, we've talked about this in the past as well. It's not just about having a to do list, it's about having a to don't list. What are you doing that you should stop doing that's holding you back, that's interfering in these processes? Get rid of them. Stop doing those things and figure out what to replace them with so that you're actually getting the results you want.
Absolutely. And what you're doing by developing these things is you're actually developing positive habits, because processes do become habits. And if your process is automatically complaining and looking for to criticize things, that's a problem that you have. But if you can turn that around, and basically the way to turn that around is to just pause after you react to something and you want to criticize something or say something, and just be silent for a second and say to yourself, is it really worth it? And turn it into a positive thing, like either not doing anything at all or a positive response to turn things around. I mean, these are all things that you can work on, and it's all things that we've heard of before. And, all we're trying to do here is just make people aware that you can do this for anything. Again, that Thanksgiving meal, your business, if you take a little pause and organize a process to get things done in a positive way, it works.
Exactly. All right, we're just about at the end of our time. So, Chip, what do you think is the big takeaway for our listeners this week?
Well, one of the biggest things that I've been doing first thing in the morning every single day that starts it off is watching this video called Enjoy the Ride, which is a whole bunch of just one-line statements with pictures set to the Impossible Dream played on a harp. And the takeaway is starting again your day with some positive morning routine to get yourself going right. And then as we're talking about processes, it's really, again, writing down things that are you got to do, the recipe process like you talked about, writing down what you're doing and then how to do it, and it's going to work for you. So think processes and your life will be easier for it. You'll be a lot more sane for it, and you'll be a lot happier too.
Great. I think for me, the big takeaway is, when you start talking about process and operations, a lot of people get nervous. It sounds so complicated. But just remember that it's the same thing you're doing for your holiday traditions. There's nothing terribly difficult about putting these processes together. You do it all the time when you have your holiday meal, when you have your holiday traditions. So just take that and use it for business, for life, for career. Put these processes in place the same way you would a holiday tradition. And remember, it's about the result. So the same way your holiday tradition gives you a feeling of well-being, of being loved, of enjoyment, the processes should also create a positive experience. And that's where the benefit comes from. It comes from simplifying. So you're not worried about it. All you have to do is follow the process. It's about reducing costs because you're not duplicating efforts, because you're not going willy-nilly in all directions. You know what's going on. And it's about that final experience that you get, your customer gets, your family gets. So the process is at the center of all of this, and it's a great way to create that experience. You've been listening to the Success Showcase. You can catch us every week at xvadio.com/podcasts. You can also find us on the Apple Podcasts app, the Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Audible, Amazon Music, and wherever you find podcasts. And of course, wherever you find Success Showcase, you can find the rest of the XVadio Podcast Network. Remember, make this your best week ever and make next week even better. We'll see you then.